We begin today's shiur with the beginning of a new parak, the 12th parak of Yevamos, entitled Mitzvahs Chalitza. Here, the Gemara, the Mishnah and the Gemara will get into the practical aspects of the Chalitza ceremony. That ceremony which releases the widow of the man who died, leaving no children, and enabling her to marry anyone of her choice, releasing her from the levirate bond. On the side of the Gemara, under the nosei, the topic heading, we have the following: HaMishnah mefaretes dinim shonim hakshurim b'chalitza. The Mishnah will detail different halachas, different laws regarding the chalitza ceremony. Mispar hadayonim will deal with the number of judges. Dinim benal atzmo, laws regarding the actual shoe that is removed. Mokoim horegel, and what is the place of the foot, place on the foot that is required. The Mishnah: Mitzvahs chalitza b'shloisha dayonim. The proper way of doing chalitza is in the presence of three judges. Vafilu shloshtan hedyotos, even if they are three commoners. Cholza ben minal chalitzasa kshera. If the shoe that she removes from the brother-in-law's foot is a minal, Rashi says shel or rach hu ke'ein shalanu. It's a soft leather type shoe, similar to what Rashi calls some our shoes. So then it's okay. The indication of the language of the Mishnah, the expression of chalitza kshera indicates that it's not the best choice, but it's okay. Rashi is sensitive to this, and he says chalitza kshera avol lechatchila lo, but as a first choice, no. Kedem meforshli come on, because and it will be explained later. Mishum minol hamarupat shinit al gavo. The minol type shoe is subject to being ripped, where the top of it could be ripped off. Aval ikar chalitza b'sandal. The ikar, the main form of chalitza, is through a different type of foot gear called a sandal. Vushal or kosher. It's made of hardened leather. Umuvushal. The leather is cooked. Umishenifchas ein lo takona. It's a type of leather that when it gets ripped, it has no takona. It can't be fixed. V'ein derech linola, and one would not wear it. So we're looking for that kind of, we'll call that kind of shoe that if it's good now, that's it. It's good now, but if something happens to it, it's rendered useless. The Mishnah continues: An pilia chalitza psula. If anpilia is used, that's a cloth type of shoe that is unfit. It's psula. It's not qualified. It doesn't qualify as an acceptable form of chalitza. Besandal sheyesh lo okev kosher. The sandal that is the preferred shoe, if it has a heel to it, it's good. V'she'ein lo okev posel. If it doesn't have a heel to it, it's a heel. Or Rashi says uses a French word. It might very well be a reference to a sole. It doesn't have a sole to it. It's not acceptable. Min harakuva ulamata chalitza kshera. Any part of the foot from beneath the knee. In other words, you're dealing with a person whose foot was amputated, but there remains the portion of the leg beneath the knee, so that's okay. So that if the shoe were attached to the stump of the leg under the beneath the knee, it's okay. Min arkuva ulamala chalitza psula. But the removal of the shoe from a leg that's been amputated above the knee, that is not considered an acceptable form of chalitza. Cholza b'sandal she'ein shelo. If the shoe removed was a shoe that didn't belong to the brother, oy b'sandal shel eitz, or a shoe made of wood, o b'shel smol biyamin, or if it's a left shoe that was removed from the right foot, chalitza kshera. The chalitza is acceptable. Cholza begodol shu yochol laloch bo. If a shoe that's larger than his shoe size was removed, it's larger, but he's able to walk with it. That's what's described here. Oy bekoton shu chayfes roiv raglo, or shoe that's small but it covers the majority of his foot. Chalitza kshera. The chalitza is acceptable. The details of this Mishnah will be explained in the upcoming Gemara. Ume'achar da'afilu shloisha edyotos. Once you tell me in the Mishnah that 3 commoners are acceptable, dayonim lomali, why does the Mishnah make reference to dayonim? Dayonim ostensibly are people from the Sanhedrin, people from the formal court system. So we're not requiring that. We're requiring commoners. So why does the Mishnah say dayonim? Ha komash malon. The following is what the Mishnah wants to tell us. Debo'inon b'shloisha shiyodim lahakrois ke'ein dayonim. We require 3. They might be commoners, but they are able to read. The chalitza ceremony requires the announcement or recitation of portions in the Torah. So they have to be able to read like people that are knowledgeable, like judges. Tanina lahadu torah rabbanan. Our Mishnah reflects information that you see in a brisa. Mitzvahs chalitza b'shlosha shiyodim lahakrois ke'ein dayanim. And here you have that very point that we just mentioned, that the mitzvah chalitza requires 3 that are able to read. They're knowledgeable, they're capable of reading like judges. Rabbi Yehuda Omer b'chamisha. Rabbi Yehuda requires 5 judges, 5 people present for the chalitza ceremony. On the side of the Gemara, they say the topic heading we have here, Mikoros lemispar dayonim debo'inan l'chalitza, sources for these numbers. L'tanakama Gimel 3 and the Rabbi Yehuda 5. My Taina, the Gemara continues, my Taima the Tanakama, what's the basis of the Tanakama who says 3? The Sanya, the Tanaic source cites words from the Torah, and Rashi quotes the relevant psukim. One pasuk that Rashi quotes is V'koru v'olso Yevimto Hashaira El Hazikenim. The Yevimto goes to the gate, to the elders. And another pasuk that will be dealt with, V'koru lo ziknei iro. So now, with those psukim in mind, specifically the words zikenim and the word ziknei, we continue. Zikenim equals shnayim. The use of the word elders in the plural form indicates 2. And now there's another halacha that's dealt with here very briefly. The ain based in shokol. And you can't have a court that is made up of an even number. Based in shokol means an even number. So 2 is an even number. And a basin has to be set up in such a way that if a basin were, let us say, take a vote on something, that you will have a majority, not a split decision. So we don't have even number courts. Mosifan aleim oid echad, and therefore we have to add another. Harei kan shlosha, that gives you a total of 3. Rabbi Yehuda ziknei shnayim zikenim shnayim. You have an additional word that has to be accounted for, and that's the word ziknei, which is also in the plural form. We quoted the pasuk before that you can see in the Rashi, V'korlo ziknei iro. Ziknei is in the plural form, 2, and zikenim is also 2. The ain based in shokol 2 and 2 would be 4. You can't have an even number. Mosifan alem od echad. We add 1 more. Harei kan chamisha. That gives you 5. And now, as we go through the Gemara, the opinions of each one, the Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda, will be presented, and we'll be going in a type of back and forth situation. What does each one do with the other one's sources? And in order to help in following who the focus is on, we squiggle underline the focus, the name being focused on here. For example, for Tanakama, the next line you can see for Rabbi Yehuda, and this marking scheme will continue to the top of the upper part of Omid Beis as well. The Tanakama hai ziknei my ovidle. What does the Tanakama do with the word ziknei that Rabbi Yehuda darshan for an additional 2? Answer: Miboyale l'ribuye afilu shloisha hedyotos. From the extra word zikne, the Chachomim, the Tanakama, sees that we can include not just officials. Zikanim would imply formal scholars, formal judges. So the extra expression says, you know what? You can have even 3 commoners. Rebuta hedyotos min ole. Where does Rebuta learn that commoners are acceptable? And note that we have a long answer. The answer takes us to the top of Omid Beis. Nafka le, Rebuta will learn out commoners may li'aynei. The word li'aynei appears in the psukim that are relevant to the chalitza ceremony, and so he sees from the word li'aynei, di'amar mor li'aynei prat l'sumin, and it's been taught that the word li'aynei means in front of their eyes, that it excludes blind people. So blind people cannot serve as the court for chalitza. From the fact that the word leine is coming to exclude blind individuals, we conclude from here that as a result of that they are excluded, but we can accept even commoners. If you were to think that you do need formal judges from the court, from the formal court called Sanhedrin, why would I have to go out of my way to exclude the blind? Miditani Rav Yosef Nafka. Blind would be excluded from Rav Yosef's teaching. The Tani Rav Yosef teaches as follows: Kishem shebeisim menukin b'tzedek, kach beisim menukin mikol mum. Just like the court must be clean and free of sin, menukim b'tzedek means they're clean and they are righteous. So too, they must be physically clean of blemishes, and that would include the exclusion of blind individuals. Shenemar, we continue at the top of Omid Beis. Shenemar, kuloch yafa rayasi umum ein boch. So from this pasuk we learn that the court must be also physically blemish free, so that the fact that the word li'enei is used to exclude sumin, it shows us that the population that we draw upon for the chalitza ceremony is not the court. Hence we learn even commoners, because if the population drawn upon for the chalitza ceremony was the court, the formal courts, then you wouldn't need li'enei to exclude sumin. V'idach, the Tanakama, hahu li'aynei my ovid lei. What does the Tanakama derive from li'aynei? After all, the Tanakama had ziknei as his source to include hedyotos. Rebuta used li'aynei as his source to from which we would learn even hedyotos. So what does the Tanakama do with li'aynei? Answer: Hahu lichidarova hu dasa. It comes to teach that which Rava derived. The Omar Rava tzrichi dayoni lemechsi roka tekonofik mipuma diavama. The judges that are present for the chalitza ceremony have to be able to see the spit. Now, spitting is one of the facets of the chalitza ceremony. The sister-in-law, she spits in the presence of her brother-in-law and in the presence of the judges. And from li'enei we learn that the spittle itself must be visible to the judges. So that phrase means the tzrichi dayoni lemechsi. The dayonim, the judges, have to see the roika, the spittle, the konofik mipuma that exits her mouth. Puma is her mouth, the yavama of the sister-in-law. Dichtiv le'einei hazikenim v'yorka. The idach, the Gemara asks, well, Rebbe Yehuda nami miboya le lechedorova, does Rebbe Yehuda not in fact need li'einei for that point of law? In hochinami, you're right. V'ela hedyotos minole. So then, where will Rebbe Yehuda learn that commoners are acceptable? Before this, we thought that Le'ene was his source for commoners, but now we're saying Le'ene is needed for the noticing or the visibility of the rok on the part of the Dayanim. So where does Rabbi Yehuda now learn hedyotos from, commoners? Nafka mi b'Yisrael. Yisrael called to who? The word b'Yisrael appears in the pasuk, and you can see the pasuk is quoted in the Rashi at the upper part of the page, the upper first line, b'Yisrael lahakim lachiv shem b'Yisrael. So from the word b'Yisrael, we learn any kind of Yisrael, any kind of Jew, even a commoner. V'idach hai b'Yisrael, my ovidle. What does the Tanakama do with that word? Answer: Miboyalei l'chadetoni Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda. Tanakama needs it for Shmuel's teaching. B'Yisrael means b'beisin shel Yisrael v'lo b'beisin shel Gerim. The assembled sages or people, judges for the ceremony must be Jews of Jewish lineage, not converts. V'idach, Rabbi Yehuda, where does he learn the exclusion of converts for the chalitza ceremony? B'Yisrael achrina ksiv. There's another pasuk in which Yisrael is found. The first Yisrael that was quoted in the Tanaic source was from Dvarim Perek Chaf Hei pasuk Zayin. This is a B'Yisrael word that you find in pasuk Yud. V'idach, well, the Tanakama, what does he do with that additional B'Yisrael? Miboyalei l'chedesanya. He'll need it for the following teaching. Amr Yehuda, Pam achas ho'isi yoshev lifnei Rabbi Tarfon. Once I was seated in the presence of Rabbi Tarfon, ubo Yevama lachloitz, and a Yevama came to us for a chalitza ceremony. The Omar Lanu, and Rabbi Tarfon said, Anu kulchem, I want all of you to respond chalot sanal, so that there's a refrain on the part of those assembled when the ceremony takes place, and that's learned from B'Yisrael, that those that are assembled also participate in this sense, that they recite that statement. V'idach Rabbi Yehuda mi v'nikra nafka. The word v'nikra is in the pasuk, and we've quoted this on the side of the words in Perek Chaf Hei of Dvarim pasuk Yud v'nikra shmo b'Yisrael beis chalot sanal. And you can take advantage of that which we've included on the side to see the relevant psukim. V'nikra means they proclaim, so that's a reference to this calling out of chalot sanal. Elo me'ata. Now, if numbers of judges for the chalitza ceremony are determined by the plural form of words, so why stop at 3 and 5, Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda respectively? V'karu equals shnayim. In pasuk ches, you see the word v'karu, that's in the plural form, and v'dibru equals shnayim, that's another plural form. Hachi nami, are you going to say then the Rabbi Yehuda harei kantisha, because we've added 2 and 2, another 4, so according to Rabbi Yehuda, who already established 5 and 4 is 9. The Rabbanon harei kan shiva, and according to the Rabbanon, whose basic number was 3, now we're going to add these 4, giving you a total of 7. Now, of course, that's not their opinions. Their opinions were Rabbi Yehuda 5 and the Rabbanon 3, not 9 and 7. The Gemara responds, Hahu miboyalei l'chedesanya. Those words, v'koru and v'dibru, are needed for something else, for that which is taught in the following source. V'koru lo means the judges that are assembled, they summon him. V'lo shlucham, they themselves summon him, summon him, and not their agents, not their emissaries. V'dibru elov, and they speak to him, they address him. Melamed, this teaches us, shemasiyan lo eitza ha'genes loi, they provide him with proper counsel. Shim hoya hu yeled v'zikena, if he, the brother, the surviving brother, is youthful, is young, and she's old. Hu zakein v'hi yalda, or the opposite, he's old, he's elderly and she's young. Omrim lo, we tell him, ma lecha itzel yalda, ma lecha itzel zakena. What, you're an old man, what are you doing trying to marry a young woman? Or you're a young fellow, what are you trying to marry an elderly woman. Klach eitzel shekamoscha, go unto someone like you. V'al tachnis tota l'toch beisecha, don't bring into your house strife. So you see that if there's a very large age gap between the two, that is only a recipe for discontent, for strife, and hence, even though Yibum is regarded as a mitzvah, but there's this additional element of, we'll say, common sense that plays a role. And that's reflected in the words, V'dibru elov. They speak him, they address him, providing him with counsel as how to really proceed. Omar Rava, Omar of Nachman, Halacha Chalitza b'shloisha. The ruling is that Chalitza requires 3 like the Tanakama. Hoil v'sosam lontano kavosei. Since we have our Mishnah, which is a Stam Mishnah, it's a Mishnah that's without a name in it, and Mishnayos that are presented without names are viewed as, let's say, more authoritative, and hence 3 is the way to go. Now, we have a long question. Omar le Rava le Rav Nachman. Rava had just quoted Rav Nachman. Now Rava addresses Rav Nachman. I hachi miun nami disnan miun. This is a process or a procedure when a girl was married rabbinically through the good offices of her brother or mother. This girl is a minor. She's under 12. Her father died, and rabbinically, the mother and brother can marry her off to some man. And since it's a rabbinic type marriage, there's this additional feature that before reaching adulthood, before 12 years of age, the girl can walk out by refusing. Miyun is refusal, refusing to continue with the fellow. Her refusal is done in the presence of judges. So now, with regard to Chalitza, we said 3 are required because we have a Stam Mishnah indicating 3. Well, if that be the case, Miyun Nami Disnan HaMiyun VaChalitza B'Shlosha. There's a Mishnah in Masechet Sanhedrin that says 3 for Miyun, just like we require 3 for Chalitza. Are you going to say that Miyun also is 3? V'chitema hachi nami. And if you say yes, that's right. V'hatanya. But we have the following source. We're going to read a Tanaic source, and it's important to note at the end of the source, we have a connector indicating to keep reading, where you see the third wide line. At the end of the line, Rav Yosef Bar Yumi says, and Rav Nachman, the halacha is like that pair. And we'll have to see, that's going to be our point of focus. So, let's continue now. Regarding the question of how many are needed for Miyun. V'hatanya, Miyun, Beis Shammai Omrim, Beis Din Mumchinu, Beis Hillel Omrim, Beis Din, V'shelo Beis Din. As far as Miyun is concerned, Beis Shammai insists on a court of experts, and Beis Hillel says in Beis Din and not in Beis Din. You can see that Beis Hillel disagrees with Beis Shammai, saying that the requirement of having a court of experts is not necessary. Both agree, however, that you need, number-wise, you need 3. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Ozer, Rabbi Yossi, Machshirin B'Shnayim. Now these 2 Tanoim say 2 is enough. V'yomar Rav Yosef Bar Minyumi, Yomar Rav Nachman, Halacha Koisu Hazug. And here you have a ruling. In fact, Rav Nachman is quoted here as saying the halacha is like that pair of rabbis, meaning 2. So that here you have a final ruling of 2, even though it is contrary to the 3 that you find in a Stam Mishnah. So why is it then that Rav Nachman with regard to Chalitza says 3 is enough, and with regard to Miyun, even though there's a Stam Mishnah indicating 3, says 2 is enough? Now you see there are a few triangles that appear on us, and on the side, under the Nosei Mivneh heading, we indicate Shuvos LaSheila Lama Dafka B'Chalitza Poiskim Shehi B'Shlosha V'lo B'Miyun. Why Dafka? Why only by Chalitza do we say 3, and not so by Miyun? So answers to that. The Gemara says, Hosam Chad Stama V'Ocha Trei Stami. With regard to Miyun, you only have 1 stam mishnahs, one unnamed authoritative type mishnah. So that's not as, we'll say, as authoritative, as convincing, as opposed to Chalitza, where you have two stam mishnahs. You have our mishnah and the mishnah in Sanhedrin. That mishnah in Sanhedrin, by the way, made reference to Chalitza as well. As you can see, just a couple lines up on the first wide line, the second word on the line. The Gemara asks, Hasanami Trei Stami Ninu. Regarding Miyun and the number 3, you have actually two stam mishnayos. It says, Disnan, Miyana o Shecholza Befanav, Isaena Mipnei Shehu Bezdin. The Mishnah says that if Miyun or Chalitza took in front of him, in front of a sage, so he is allowed to marry her because he was part of a Bezdin. Now this is a source that we had quite a bit earlier in the Masechta, where the general issue there was, can a functionary, a judge or witnesses, can they marry the people concerning whom they were present in this judicial capacity? So if without them, or if the decision in whatever case was totally dependent on them, so they're considered having a vested interest, so they can't marry the woman concerning whom they were functioning in this judicial capacity. However, if the decision was not totally dependent on that individual, so then they can marry the woman. So here we have the source that's from earlier in the Masechta, that if a woman is mimayenes, or she does chalitza in front of a sage, but he's part of a court, and you see the word, it said here, Bezdin, he's part of a court. That particular judge, one of the members of the court, can marry her because there were two others. He wasn't the sole functionary. What do we see though from here? We see a second source dealing with miyun, and that it is done in the context of a bezdin, of a court of 3. A minimum, the minimum required for a court is 3. So the question once again is, why does Rav Nachman say that with regard to chalitza you need 3, with regard to miyun it's not that way, 2 is enough? The Gemara answers, Ella hasam trei stami hacha tlosa stami. Here it's a real numbers game. With regard to miyun, I grant you there are 2 stam sources for 3, but with regard to chalitza there are 3 stam sources. In fact, in this last source you see chalitza also referred to, making it a third source for 3 for chalitza. The Gemara asks, in all due respect to the numbers game, michti ha-stama v'ha-stama, mali chad-stam, mali trei-stam, mali tlosa. We're dealing with unnamed sources. Now, unnamed sources are in and of themselves they're quite authoritative. What difference should it make if you've got 1, if you've got 2, if you've got 3 sources? You have a stam source by miyun saying 3. So then why the difference? Why in the case of miyun are we not basing ourselves on the stam source indicating 3, and with regard to chalitza we do? Elo Omer Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak hoyol v'sosam b'mokim machloikes. With regard to the numbers required for chalitza, you find an unnamed statement in the context of controversy, where there was controversy. We'll try to explain this as we go on in the Gemara. Maybe before we go on, we'll just look at Rashi for introductory purposes. You notice Rashi in the upper part of the narrow lines, Hayol v'ustama b'mokom machlokesi shenechlak sham Rabbi Yehuda b'davar acher. We find Rabbi Yehuda, who should be a familiar name to us, because Rabbi Yehuda, in the case of chalitza, mentioned that he requires 5. We find in another source where Rabbi Yehuda appears in a controversy regarding a different topic. Ubedavar zen, regarding this matter of chalitza lo nechlak, Rabbi Yehuda is silent. Shma mino hodar be. It must be that he had a change of opinion. We see that Rabbi Yehuda appears over there in the source we haven't read yet, arguing. When it comes to the issue of chalitza, he doesn't argue. But we know that he has a different opinion, but yet he's silent over there. What does that show? It shows that yes, once he held you need 5, but he had a reversal of thought. Avol miyun lav stama b'mokom machlokesi. But as far as the issue of miyun is concerned, you don't have that same phenomenon of an unnamed statement regarding the requirement of 3 in a case where there was controversy. Tahanoch trei darach tanoi Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Ozer Rabbi Yossi lo maisinon hosam apluta achriti denemo midelo iflug baho shmamino haji bahu. But the other opinions, those 2 other tanoim that said 2 is enough, they do not state their opinion in a place where they had argued regarding some other topic, and then were silent that we could say that there was a change of opinion. So let us now turn back to the Gemara. The final triangle that we have is Elom Rav Nachman Rav Yitzchak Hoyel v'Sosam v'Mokoy Machlokes. The issue of Chalitza, you find silence on the part of Rabbi Yehuda in a situation where Rabbi Yehuda himself actually had expressed a dissenting point of view on a different matter. Disnan smicha zekenim ve'eglo arufa b'shlosha divrei Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yehuda omer b'chamisha. There are 2 ceremonies referred to here. There's smicha zekenim, that's the certification of a person to be considered a judge, and eglo arufa, that's the ceremony where a murder victim is found between 2 cities, closer a little to one than the other. The members of that city have to provide a calf whose neck is broken, and that's quite an involved situation in and of itself. The details are not important for us right now, but how many are necessary for those ceremonies? So here you have 2 opinions. Rabbi Yossi says 3, and Rabbi Yehuda says 5. Now you see that we've dashed underline Rabbi Yehuda's name. Notice, here he expresses his opinion regarding numbers, regarding those ceremonies. And then the Mishnah goes on to say, HaChalitza v'amiyunin b'shlosha v'lo kapolig Rabbi Yehuda. Chalitza is done in the presence of 3. And here you don't have Rabbi Yehuda speaking up. He expressed his opinion regarding the first 2 ceremonies, but here he's quiet. And we know that we've seen him in the past saying a different number than 3. Why is he quiet over here? Shma mino hodar be Rabbi Yehuda. Shma mino. It shows us that Rabbi Yehuda had a change of mind, and therefore the 3 is viewed as a unanimous opinion as far as the numbers required for Chalitza. Before we continue, there's an introductory point that will appear shortly. First we continue with the Gemara text. Omar Rava Tzrichi Dayoni Lemikba Duchta. The Dayanim have to establish a location for the Chalitza, and they say that in this location this location is designed for Chalitza, where a designation of a spot for that purpose. Techtivi also Yevimto Ashaira El Hazakenim. That's what is derived from the pasuk that the Yevama arises to the gate to the elders. Rav Papa for Rav Huna Braid Rav Yeshua Avdi Uvdo B'chamisha. They did a Chalitza in the presence of 5. The Gemara asks, where'd you get the number 5 from? Keman, Rabbi Yehuda. Are you basing that on the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda HaHadarbe? But he had a reversal of thinking on that. We saw just before. So why are you requiring 5? Le'pursume milsa. Rashi says that pursume milsa the chalutza hivalo linsiva l'kain. They wanted to have more people present so that it would become well known that this woman is a chalutza, and thereby not end up marrying a kohen. And Inami, Rashi has another opinion on that, why the requirement of more than is necessary. The leisu inshi velikfitsu Allah. So other people should come and and seek her out in marriage. Now that she's been freed from the levirate bond, others can marry her. So they wanted that to become well known, more public, more publicized. You'll notice on the side we have the nosei mivneh maisim she'asu chalitza b'fnei chamisha. The dashed underline you'll see highlights this expression lefirsume milsa. Lo shetzrichim lekach elo lefirsume milsa. Not that we need to have 5, but the 5 will generate greater publicity. We continue in the Gemara. Rav Ashi iklo lebei Rav Kana. Rav Ashi went to the home of Rav Kana. Omar le solik mor legabon lemluye bei chamisha. Come and join us so that we can now have 5. Apparently there were 4 people assembled, and Rav Ashi would represent the 5th. Omar Rav Kahana. Have koimno kamed Rav Yehuda. I was standing in the presence of Rav Yehuda. V'omar li ta sok lezirza dekoni letstarufi bei chamisha. Rashi on the expression lezirza dekoni chavila shel konim v'ochu leishiv sham l'shem chalitza zu. It was a bundle of reeds that were tied together, apparently to serve as a seat, as a bench, place for sitting, so that and that would be the designated place for the chalitza. So Rav Yehuda is inviting Rav Kana, come to the zirza dekani, come to the reed bundle, litzterufi bei chamisha, to join us and form a group of 5. Amru lo lama li chamisha. They asked Rav Yehuda, why do you need 5? Omar Lahu, he told them, ki hechi de lefarse milsa, so as to publicize the matter. Omar Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda, ki hava koimno kamei de Rav Yehuda. Omar li, Rav Shmuel tells us that when I was in the presence of Rav Yehuda, he said to me, sok tola zirzu dekani, come to the bundle of reeds, the sufi bechamisha, to join, forming a group of 5, lefirsumi milsa, so as to accomplish greater publicity. Omar le, Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda told him, Tanina, but we have a Tanaic source that says, Be Yisrael, but based in Yisrael below, but based in Shelgerim, V'ano Gerana. The Yisrael word taught that you have to have a court of Jews, not converts. It's true that a convert is a Jew, but we're talking about a Jew of pure Jewish descent. And Rav Shmuel says, I must tell you the truth, that I am a ger, I am a convert. Well, that was very impressive on his part for Shmuel to reveal his background and not to participate in a situation that a ger shouldn't participate. Now, just by way of parenthetically, what's interesting here is that the basic number was really 3. He was joining up to form a unit of 5 for extra publicity, and even so he says that he doesn't want to be part of that. Again, that's just a thought that comes to mind without my having researched it, and I guess that Rav Yehuda was very impressed with Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda's hesitation, even though maybe by letter of the law he could have participated, because you had your basic 3 anyway. So Rav Yehuda says as follows: Kagon Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda mafikno mamona apumei. And this statement will be redone for accuracy in a moment, but right now we're going to translate it. It's not accurate, but we're going to translate it. Rav Yehuda said regarding this gentleman Rav Shmuel, he says, someone like that, he's so honest, so reliable, I would extract money from A and give to B if it was on his word alone. He's so reliable, he's so trustworthy, that if he says that I know that so-and-so owes money, that A owes money to B, I would take the money from A on his word. So the Gemara asks, could that possibly to extract money, to take away money from A to give to B? When it comes to matters of judgment and court procedure, you have to have 2 witnesses. It's not enough to say for a single witness to say, I saw I saw A take a loan from B, and hence A owes money to B. You need two witnesses. So what was Rav Yehuda saying as his expression of let's say, admiration for Rav Shmuel? Elo Morana Shtora Apume. Notice the word Morana has its root, the word Ra. Ra is something that's bad or weak. Ra'ua, something that's weak. So what Rav Yehuda was saying regarding Shmuel was that if Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda would come and tell me that I know that this document has been paid up. So if you have Mr. X coming to collect from Mr. Y with a star indicating that Y owes X, and so Mr. X is trying to collect, and in comes Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda saying, I know that star has been paid up already. So upon such a comment, if it were ever made, Rav Yehuda would say, I would trust him, and I would not enable X to collect from Mr. Y. So here, that's not a function of extracting money from one to give to two. That, in fact, you need to have two witnesses in order to be able to do that. But as far as weakening someone's claim, if the source of that information was someone that's very trustworthy, so you would act accordingly. Omar Rava. We continue at the top of Kuf Beis Amud Aleph. Ger Don Es Chavero Devar Torah. And on the top of the page we have our topic heading, Ger Yochel Lodun Ger Chavero Dinei Nefashos. When it comes to capital cases, even though we saw a certain limitation, we'll say, to a ger functioning as a judge, nevertheless, when it comes to the judgment of a ger, another convert can serve as a judge regarding the case. And Rava says this assumption that something that's sanctioned by the Torah, that a ger can judge his fellow ger. Shenamar, the pasuk says. Now the pasuk deals with the appointing of a king. However, when we deal with appointing of a king, we're also dealing with a broader topic, the appointing of officials. So the pasuk says, "Soim tosim alecha melech, hashivchar Hashem elokecha bo." You shall place upon yourselves a king that Hashem chooses. Mikerev alchecha tosim alecha melech. From amongst your brethren, you place upon yourself the king. And now the drosha. Alecha, on you, on the Jewish people of pure Jewish descent, hu debo'inon mikerev achecha. It is there that the requirement of mikerev achecha applies. Mikerev achecha, meaning from amongst your own kind, from amongst yourselves, others that are of pure Jewish descent. Avo. Ger, don es chavero ger. A convert can judge his friend, his fellow convert. So once again, when it comes to people of pure Jewish descent, so in order for them to be judged, you have to have someone like them, also others of pure Jewish descent. But that's limited to the case of people that are of pure Jewish descent. However, when it comes to converts, so they can be judged by even those that are not of pure Jewish descent, by other converts. V'im hoisa imo miYisrael. If you have someone whose mother was Jewish, even though his father was not, don afilu Yisrael, then he's considered a full-fledged Jew with regard to serving as a judge. A judge even in capital offenses. Li'inyan chalitza, however, and this is interesting, when it comes to the chalitza ceremony, there's an additional, more restrictive requirement than you have even in capital cases. Ad shei oviv v'imo miYisrael. You have to have the fellow's father as well as mother being from Jewish descent, or being Jews. It's not enough that the mother is Jewish. Shenemar v'nikro shemoi b'Yisrael. Now the word b'Yisrael, Rashi says, is mashma shei Yisrael mikol tzodim. It implies that the judge has to be of Jewish descent from both sides, both mother and father. Before we finish today's shiur, I would like to take the liberty of reading a halacha from the Rambam in Hilchis Yibum v'Chalitza, Perek Dalid, Halacha Hey. There he says, V'Chalitza b'yom v'lo b'layla, a point that we haven't discussed yet in our Gemara. U'b'fnei shlosha shiyodim lahakros, it must be in front of 3 that know how to read. Ve'im echod min hashlosha ger, possible if one of the 3 is a convert, so he is disqualified. Va'afilu hoya oviv ger ve'imo Yisraelis, even if his father is a convert and his mother is of pure Jewish descent, lo sachlotz adshe oviv ve'imo Yisrael. So when you see this expression oviv ve'imo Yisrael, we're according to the Rambam, it's excluding parents that themselves are converts. Umitzvosa bechamisha, the Rambam says that the best way, the proper way to do it is with 5. Kidei lefarse madavar, so as to publicize the matter. Vafilu ve'osan hashnayim afilu hoyu amei haaretz. So for our purposes, though, what we gain from seeing this in the Rambam is the definition of imo mi Yisrael, that not only is the ger himself someone that's disqualified for chalitza, but even if his parents are gerim, that would disqualify him from being acceptable for a court of chalitza.